The Divide of the Korean Empire, a chronicle of North and South Korea's emergence, read and published by Mr. Books. Introduction. The Peninsula of Korea, with its rich tapestry of history, culture, and conflict, stands as a poignant testament to the complexities of national identity and the forces that shape it. This book seeks to unravel the intricate threads that have historically woven together the fabric of North and South Korea, leading to their current divisions. From the ancient dynasties that once ruled the land to the modern geopolitical landscape, shaped by outside powers, the story of Korea is one of resilience, struggle, and profound transformation. The origins of the Korean Empire can be traced back over a millennium with the establishment of the Three Kingdoms. However, this rich history would soon be overshadowed by external influences, most notably the imperial ambitions of Japan. The period of colonization not only altered Korea's political landscape, but also inflicted deep cultural wounds that would resonate for generations. The narrative of the Korean people, once united by shared heritage and customs, began to fracture under the weight of foreign domination and socio-political ideologies. The culmination of these tensions manifested dramatically during World War II period that would irrevocably change the Korean Peninsula. The post-war environment saw the rise of two starkly different ideologies, communism in the north and democracy in the south. These ideological divisions crystallized the split between North and South Korea, leading to a protracted conflict that remains unresolved to this day. The Korean War, often characterized by intense violence and human suffering, further entrenched the divide. The setbacks experienced by both nations would shape their futures in ways that continue to influence global politics. Notably, North Korea evolved into an isolated autocracy, while South Korea embraced a path of growth and democratization. In examining the legacies of these events, this book aims to shed light on the ongoing implications of the division. The complexities of contemporary Korea cannot be understood without appreciating the historical context that has birthed the current realities. As North Korea clings to its isolationist policies and South Korea emerges as a beacon of democracy and economic prowess, the question remains, what does the future hold for the Korean people? Through 8 carefully structured chapters, this chronicle will provide a comprehensive overview of Korea's tumultuous journey. From historical foundations to current struggles, the narrative seeks to illuminate the paths forged by both Koreas, offering insights into their distinct identities, shaped by shared history. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button to support the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an audiobook that could change your life. Now, let's begin. Enjoy. Chapter 1. Origins of the Korean Empire. A historical foundation. The story of Korea begins in antiquity, with a civilization that predates much of Asia's most famous empires. Emerging as a unified entity under the Goryeo dynasty in 918 CE, Korea cultivated a rich cultural, political, and economic identity that distinguished it as one of East Asia's most enduring nations. Its people, bound by Confucian values and the ethos of independence, thrived under the Joseon dynasty from 1392 to 1897, an era that cemented its reputation for scholarly devotion and technological advancements. However, the late 19th century signaled turbulent winds. As Western imperialism swept through Asia, Korea found itself sandwiched between rising powers China, Japan, and Russia. These external pressures challenged Korea's sovereignty as it struggled to maintain autonomy. Still clinging to Confucian values, the Joseon royalty implemented reforms aimed at modernizing its structures. Yet, these efforts were fragile in the face of external aggressors, keenly aware of Korea's strategic importance as a buffer, trade route, and supplier of raw resources. In 1897, Korea declared itself an empire under Emperor Gojong in a desperate attempt to solidify its independence amidst increasing interference from Japan and King China. Though ambitious in its intentions, the Korean Empire lacked the infrastructure and military might to fend off looming threats. By 1905, Korea was coerced into signing the Ulsa Treaty under Japanese influence, effectively reducing it to a protectorate. The annexation of Korea in 1910 marked the collapse of the Korean Empire and the onset of nearly 4 decades of Japanese colonial rule. This period profoundly ravaged Korea's identity. Land was seized, cultural expressions suppressed, and thousands were forced into labor, while resistance bubbled through movements like the March Once Independence movement in 1919. Korea's pleas for sovereignty largely fell on deaf ears internationally. Still, these movements planted seeds for the eventual resurgence of Korean nationalism. As the Korean Empire faded from history, its legacy lingered in the hearts of its people. It became the foundation upon which future battles for independence and social identity would be fought. This chapter doesn't merely serve as a historical backdrop, but as a prologue for Korea's future. The collapse of its empire initiated the chain reaction of division and betrayal that would culminate in its fate as 2 irreconcilable nations. Chapter 2: The Shadow of Imperial Japan, Colonization and Crisis. The annexation of Korea by Japan in 1910 marked a seismic shift in Korean history, ushering in an era of colonization characterized by suppression, exploitation, and forced assimilation. For 35 brutal years, Korea endured Japanese imperial control, a period that left indelible scars on its people, culture, economy, and identity. Japan's imperial ambitions in the early 20th century sought to transform Korea into an extension of its empire. The annexation, formalized under the Treaty of Annexation in 1910, eliminated Korea's sovereignty and thrust the nation into an era of systematic transformation to serve Japan's needs. Korean landowners saw their properties confiscated. Workers were subjected to exploitation, and industrial output was redirected to fuel Japan's growing economy and war machine. One of the most insidious aspects of colonization was the cultural oppression imposed by Japan. Korean language, traditions, and even names were stripped away in an effort to enforce assimilation. Schools mandated Japanese language instruction, cultural practices were outlawed, and Koreans were coerced into adopting Japanese names, a stark reminder of Japan's intent to erase Korean identity. Resistance was a constant undercurrent during these decades of colonization. The March Once movement of 1919 remains one of the most prominent uprisings, as millions of Koreans staged protests demanding independence. Though the movement was violently suppressed, it galvanized the spirit of resistance that would persist through the colonial era. The economic exploitation of Korea was profound. Japan established industries and infrastructure on Korean soil, but the benefits primarily flowed toward Japanese interests, leaving Korea impoverished and agricultural workers overburdened. Resources were extracted at unsustainable levels, with little regard for local welfare. Japan's militarization during the 1930s further intensified the plight of Koreans. As Japan prepared for war across Asia, Korean men were conscripted into labor forces and military service. Women were coerced into the horrifying system of comfort women, subjected to exploitation under the guise of serving Japan's soldiers. Despite the oppression, nationalism and calls for liberation grew stronger. Exiled Korean leaders, like Syngman Rhee and Kim Gyu, founded provisional governments and lobbied international communities for recognition. The dawn of World War II brought a mix of hope and despair, as Koreans saw Japan's global ambitions unmasked but feared further devastation. By the end of Japan's rule in 1945, Korea stood at a precipice, free from colonization but vulnerable to another phase of Great Division. The experiences under the shadow of Imperial Japan left deep wounds that would shape Korea's post-colonial evolution, a theme explored in Chapter 3. Chapter 3: World War II and the Birth of Division. The backdrop of World War II created an environment ripe for division within the Korean Peninsula. The defeat of Japan in 1945 marked a pivotal turning point for Korea, a nation that had suffered under harsh colonial rule since 1910. As the Allied forces overcame Japan, Korea found itself briefly liberated, yet simultaneously caught in the crosshairs of competing ideologies and geopolitical interests. Initially, the liberation of Korea united many Koreans in a shared sense of hope. However, this quickly fractured as the Korean Peninsula became a focal point of Cold War tensions. The decision by the United States and the Soviet Union to divide Korea at the 38th EA parallel to facilitate the surrender of Japanese forces became the original catalyst for a deeper and lasting division. The North, under Soviet influence, began adopting a communist regime, while the South, backed by the United States, oriented itself towards democracy and capitalism. The varying trajectories of North and South Korea during this period had significant implications. The Soviet Union's commitment to fostering a communist government in the North included significant land reforms, promoting industry, and suppressing dissent. Conversely, U.S. involvement in South Korea emphasized the establishment of democratic institutions and economic development policies, albeit with contentious military oversight. Civilian sentiment during this transitional period was a melting pot of hope, fear, and uncertainty. In the North, many viewed communism as a bastion against imperialist influences, while in the South, there was an enthusiastic embrace of democratic ideals. Nonetheless, the failure to unite under a single national framework became evident as ideological rifts deepened. The political environment post-World War II became a breeding ground for conflict, culminating in a series of failed negotiations aimed at unifying the two Koreas. The establishment of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, in 1948 and the Republic of Korea, South Korea, soon after solidified the two nations' identities, but also their opposing political ideologies. The international context of this division cannot be overstated. The emerging Cold War positioned Korea as a critical battleground between the capitalist West and the communist East. This division was not merely a Korean phenomenon. It was a microcosm of the larger ideological struggle between superpowers, each vying for influence in a newly bipolar world. In summary, the period leading up to the Korean War was punctuated by ideological upheaval, national redefinition, and external manipulation. The seeds of division laid during World War II would soon bloom into a conflict that would not only devastate the Korean Peninsula, but also reshape international relations for decades to come. Chapter 4: Korea at the Crossroads, Democracy vs. Communism. Korea, at the dawn of the Cold War, stood at a critical juncture with profound implications for its future. The ideological battle between democracy and communism defined the relationship between North and South Korea, creating a stark dichotomy that would shape their respective paths for several generations. The Republic of Korea, founded in August 1948, sought to embody democratic principles, a stark contrast to its northern counterpart, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. However, early political developments in both regions were characterized by instability and authoritarian overtones. In the south, Syngman Rhee's leadership became emblematic of the struggle to maintain democratic ideals amid pressures from both internal dissent and external threats. Rhee's government, though democratic in theory, often resorted to authoritarian measures to suppress opposition, leading to widespread unrest, political purges, a lack of civil liberties, and a disregard for human rights characterized his rule, creating an atmosphere of discontent among segments of the population. Despite these challenges, the South gradually laid the foundations for a robust civil society, with increasing participation in the political process, particularly among students and labor unions. Meanwhile, in the North, Kim Il-sung's regime rapidly consolidated power through a tightly controlled political structure. Utilizing the Soviet model as a blueprint, the DPRK implemented drastic measures to ensure loyalty and repress dissent. The government promoted a cult of personality around Kim Il-sung, intertwining nationalism with communism in a strategy designed to unify the populace under a singular ideological framework. The dichotomy of ideologies between North and South Korea further intensified through propaganda, which emphasized the respective governments' positions as the rightful representatives of all Koreans. The South portrayed itself as a progressive and democratic state, while the North framed itself as the protector of the true Korean identity against perceived imperialist threats. As tensions mounted, external influences played a critical role in exacerbating the divide. The United States maintained a military presence in the South, framing its involvement as critical for countering communist encroachment. Conversely, the Soviet Union and subsequently China supported the North, fostering military capabilities and providing ideological backing. The contrast between the two Koreas became starkly evident by the late 1940s. The economic policies in the South encouraged private enterprise and foreign investment, leading to incremental growth despite political volatility. In contrast, the North emphasized state ownership and central planning, achieving initial industrial growth but fostering an unsustainable economic model reliant on Soviet aid. The ideological confrontation catalyzed a series of violent skirmishes across the 38T parallel in the lead-up to the Korean War, with both sides asserting their legitimacy to unify Korea. The lack of a peaceful resolution to issues of governance, identity, and ideology ultimately culminated in open conflict in June 1950, marking a dramatic escalation in the struggle between the two Koreas. Korea's crossroads at this juncture was not simply a regional conflict, but a pivotal moment in Cold War geopolitics, setting the stage for international involvement and the legacies that would follow. The ideological divide bore lasting scars, fracturing the nation's unity and perpetuating cycles of struggle, oppression, and division. Chapter 5: The Korean War and the Bitter Consequences. The Korean War, which erupted on June 25, 1950, marked one of the most devastating and transformative events in the history of the Korean Peninsula. What began as a conflict between two ideologically opposed Koreas quickly escalated into a war that drew in numerous international powers, reshaping both the region and the global balance of power. In the early Cold War years, the war commenced with a surprise invasion by North Korean forces across the 38TL parallel, aiming to unify Korea under a single communist regime, led by Kim Il-sung and backed by the Soviet Union and China. the North perceived the moment as opportune to consolidate control over the entire peninsula. The assault caught the South off guard and quickly overwhelmed its defenses. As North Korean troops advanced towards Seoul, the United States, under the aegis of the United Nations, intervened to prevent the fall of South Korea. The swift advance of North Korean forces prompted an urgent coalition of international military support, consisting predominantly of American troops. Led by General Douglas MacArthur, the UN forces initiated a counter-offensive, culminating in a dramatic amphibious landing at Incheon in September 1950 that turned the tide of the war. The conflict soon saw both sides engaged in a brutal and protracted struggle, characterized by trench warfare, massive casualties, and widespread destruction. As fighting intensified, cities and infrastructure across the peninsula lay in ruins. Civilians bore the brunt of the conflict, subjected to violence, displacement, and harsh living conditions. The Korean War quickly devolved into a stalemate, with the front lines shifting little despite immense sacrifices. The introduction of Chinese troops into the war in late 1950 further complicated the situation, as they pushed back UN forces and restored a precarious equilibrium. As the war dragged on, it became evident that neither side could achieve a decisive victory, leading to a focus on negotiations. The armistice agreement signed on July 27, 1953, left Korea divided at the 38th parallel, yet the underlying political tensions remained unresolved. The demilitarized zone, DMZ, became a symbol of division, an uneasy barrier that exists to this day. Over the course of the war, it is estimated that approximately 3 million Koreans lost their lives, alongside substantial destruction of infrastructure, agriculture, and communities. The consequences of the Korean War were profound and lasting. The division into North and South solidified distinct national identities that were deeply entwined with the respective political ideologies embraced by each regime. In the North, the war's end fortified Kim Il-sung's grip on power, further entrenching the autocratic governance that would define the DPRK for decades. For the South, the war necessitated significant U.S. military and economic support, establishing a long-term alliance that would shape its foreign policy. Despite initial political repression, the South, under successive leaderships, post-war gradually embarked on a path toward economic recovery and modernization. The divisions exacerbated by the Korean War led to a legacy of confrontation and hostility that permeated Korean society. The scars of war manifested in the intertwining of families, as thousands were separated by the border, their fates often unknown. The ideological rift deepened, each side presenting the other as a threat to national existence, perpetuating cycles of fear and animosity. As both Koreas dealt with the aftermath of war, the impacts resonated across generations. The emergence of the Cold War and its global implications meant that Korea was not merely a local struggle. It became emblematic of ideological battles that would shape international relations in subsequent decades. The Korean War thereby stands as a pivotal moment in history, illustrating the fragility of peace and the enduring complexities of national identity. Chapter 6: North Korea, Isolation and Autocracy. North Korea, officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, emerged from the embers of the Korean War as a hermetically sealed state characterized by extreme isolation and absolute autocracy. The regime, under Kim Il-sung, developed an oppressive political structure that aimed not only to maintain power, but also to shape a unique national identity centered around Juche, or self-reliance. From its inception, the DPRK adopted policies that fostered a cult of personality around Kim Il-sung. This ideology emphasized nationalism and independence in the face of perceived external threats, particularly from the United States and its allies. The state's propaganda machine relentlessly promoted Kim as the eternal leader and the guiding force of the nation, incorporating his legacy into every facet of public life. The regime's authoritarian control extended to all aspects of governance and society. Political dissent was ruthlessly suppressed through a network of surveillance, extensive propaganda, and a formidable security apparatus that included public executions and forced labor camps. Citizens were subjected to strict controls over their personal and social lives, with education and media serving as tools of indoctrination. The economy of North Korea, unlike that of its southern counterpart, was centrally planned and state-run, focusing on heavy industry and military spending over consumer goods. The government initially experienced some success, achieving notable industrial growth in the 1950s and 1960s. However, this growth proved unsustainable due to inefficiencies endemic to centralized control and the chronic lack of innovation. As the years progressed, North Korea's self-reliance became increasingly rigid, especially in the face of international sanctions and economic isolation. Despite the regime's insistence on independence, the reliance on Soviet support during the Cold War highlighted the contradictions in its narrative. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s further exacerbated North Korea's economic struggles, leading to a devastating famine that resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands. The isolationist policies, propelled by the regime, cultivated an insular society that remained largely disconnected from the outside world. Information about external realities was heavily filtered and manipulated, creating a climate of ignorance among the populace. Access to foreign media, technology, and ideas was almost entirely prohibited, fostering an environment where loyalty to the regime overshadowed broader human rights concerns. North Korea's belligerent stance in international relations, notably its nuclear weapons program, has further solidified its pariah status on the global stage. Yet, these military advancements, often framed as essential for national defense, come at the expense of vital resources that could otherwise support the country's development. The regime's pursuit of military power has prompted international sanctions, deepening the economic crises faced by ordinary citizens. In summary, North Korea's trajectory has been one of increasing isolation, both economically and socially. The absolute autocracy established by Kim Il-sung paved the way for a regime that prioritizes control and military capability over the welfare of its people. The complexities of its governance, alongside its commitment to ideologically driven Juche principles, create an intricate tapestry of challenge and resilience for a nation trapped in the shadows of its own making. Chapter 7: South Korea, Growth, Democracy, and Success. In stark contrast to its northern neighbor, South Korea's journey following the Korean War has been characterized by remarkable growth, democratization, and international engagement. The Republic of Korea emerged from the devastation of conflict to establish itself as a thriving democracy and a dynamic economic force on the global stage. The post-war era in the South was initially fraught with challenges, including political instability, poverty, and the consequences of war. Recognizing the need for recovery, the South benefited significantly from American aid through the Marshall Plan and other programs that facilitated reconstruction. The U.S. presence bolstered military and economic support, laying the groundwork for subsequent growth. In the 1960s, under President Park Chung-hee, South Korea began restructuring its economy through a series of ambitious 5-year plans. The focus on export-oriented industrialization marked a significant shift towards economic development, capitalizing on the nation's labor force and resources. This strategy proved phenomenally successful, transforming South Korea into one of the world's leading economies within a few decades. As economic prosperity took root, political dynamics in South Korea began to shift as well. Throughout the 1970 SE and 1980s, the nation experienced authoritarian rule under military dictatorships, leading to widespread protests demanding democracy. The Gwangju Uprising in 1980, a tragic episode of government brutality, became a defining moment in the struggle for human rights and civil liberties, ultimately galvanizing public support for democratic reforms. The transition to democracy in the late 1980 marked a pivotal chapter in South Korea's history. After a series of protests, including the monumental June Democratic Uprising in 1987, a democratic constitution was enacted, leading to free elections and the establishment of a more inclusive political system. The ascension of democratic governance not only fostered a vibrant political landscape, but also promoted greater civil engagement and accountability. South Korea's embrace of democracy coincided with a burgeoning cultural identity, which gained international prominence through the Korean Wave. Hallyu, the nation's cultural exports, such as music, television, and film, received acclaim worldwide, further enhancing South Korea's soft power and global influence. The economic and democratic successes achieved by South Korea have attracted international investment, bolstering its position as a cornerstone of the global economy. Corporations like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG became household names, demonstrating the incredible advancements attained through innovation and adaptation. However, the journey has not been without challenges. Issues such as wealth inequality, youth unemployment, and political scandals have surfaced over the years, revealing the complexities of rapid development. Moreover, the ongoing threat from North Korea necessitates a strong military posture and strategic alliances, particularly with the United States, to ensure national security. Despite these challenges, South Korea's resilience and commitment to democratic principles continue to define its trajectory. As a nation that has successfully transformed itself through perseverance and innovation, South Korea stands as a testament to the potential for growth and success, even in the wake of division. Chapter 8: Legacy of Division, the Path Forward. The division of Korea remains one of the most enduring legacies of the 20th century, rife with complexities that have shaped not only the Korean Peninsula, but also geopolitical dynamics in East Asia and beyond. As both North and South Korea navigate the intricacies of their historical divides, the paths they forge hold significant implications for regional stability and international relations. The legacies of conflict, authoritarianism, and differing political ideologies have created stark disparities between the two Koreas, profoundly influencing their national identities and societal structures. While South Korea has embraced globalization and democratic values, North Korea persists in isolation, adhering to a rigid autocratic regime that prioritizes military might over economic welfare. The implications of this division are particularly evident in the ongoing tensions that punctuate inter-Korean relations. While there have been instances of diplomatic overtures, such as summits and discussions aimed at fostering unity, the historical wounds and ideological chasms render reconciliation a complex undertaking. The legacies of distrust and conflict frequently resurface, hampering efforts to pursue comprehensive dialogue and cooperation. In the face of these challenges, the question of reunification remains a topic of significant debate within both Koreas. Opinions on the path to reunification vary widely, ranging from those advocating for immediate political and economic integration to more cautious approaches that consider the realities of governance and societal assimilation. The potential consequences of reunification, a process fraught with risks, pose critical challenges for policymakers. Furthermore, the international community plays a significant role in shaping the future of the Korean Peninsula. As tensions with North Korea continue to draw global scrutiny, the political dynamics surrounding nuclear proliferation and security concerns remain paramount. The stance taken by key players, including the United States, China, and other neighboring countries, will significantly influence the region's trajectory in the years to come. Ultimately, the legacy of division serves as both a cautionary tale and a catalyst for future possibilities. As South Korea continues to thrive as a democratic and economic powerhouse, it carries the responsibility of advocating for human rights and reconciliation. Meanwhile, North Korea must grapple with the inherent contradictions of its isolationist policies against the backdrop of a rapidly changing world. The path forward for the Korean Peninsula must be navigated with insight, empathy, and a commitment to addressing the underlying issues that perpetuate division. While the scars of history remain, the ambition for peace and prosperity offers a glimmer of hope in a landscape once dominated by conflict. The story of Korea, therefore, is not merely one of division, it is also one of resilience, potential, and a shared future waiting to be forged. If you found this video helpful, inspiring, or entertaining, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. Your support means the world. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.